Welcome back to the podcast. Friends, this is another good one. If you didn't tune in last week, I'm going to say time out and go back to that one. We're talking about the working genius. There are 6 types of working geniuses, and we're also going to talk about your frustrations. In this episode, we're going to talk about how burnout can sneak up on you and how this could actually be an indicator tool to be able to see that burnout. But this is part 2. Part 1, we focused on what is the working genius? What are the 6 types, and how do we actually understand how those impact us? In this episode, I talk with Pat, and we're actually going to move beyond that to the team. How does this impact our teams? Ever felt like there was a gap in your team? We're just not hitting on all cylinders. There's a leak here. We can't get this project from this place to that place. Ever been in a meeting that you felt got derailed because these people wanted to take it this way and these people wanted to take it this way? Yup, working genius speaks into that. Friends, if you can't tell, I am a huge fan of this tool, of Pat's work, and the team at the Table Group. I'm honored to be a guide. I went through their certification process and am a facilitator of the working genius. I go in with teams, whether it's a church team, a business team, a nonprofit team. It actually doesn't matter what type of team it is. This is phenomenal. And if you haven't taken the assessment yet, I want you to pause right now. It takes about 15 minutes. Guys, it's $25. If you can't invest $25 in understanding yourself and your leadership, I can tell you that you're not going to take this to the next level with your team. You're probably going to be misunderstood at work. Guys, it's that good. I've never gone through a certification and training process with as much excitement as I have with this, and it has delivered in every part of that. I love the conversation with Pat last week. Frankly, guys, this one's even better because we're talking about team. We're talking about why we need each other and how we fit together for the team. This guy probably needs no intro, but in case you don't know who Patrick Lencioni is, he's the brain that produced this incredible working genius assessment. He's written 12 books, and now this assessment has gone to about 1 million people already and counting, whether it is his book, The Advantage, The Ideal Team Player. He has so many thoughts about organizational health and how that's a missing piece. We're going to talk about health. We're going to talk about team, and we're going to talk about how this can help you and your team avoid ineffectiveness and burnout. Enjoy my conversation here, part 2 of the Working Genius series with my new friend, Pat Lencioni.
We get it. You're busy. You want to grow, and we want to help. You're passionate about your craft because it deeply matters to you. Your faith is important. It's your foundation. At Stay Forth, we coach leaders to avoid burnout, live and lead with clarity, purpose, and from a place of health. We want you to experience long-term impact. Welcome to the journey.
Pat, welcome back to the podcast.
It's great to be here again.
Last week, you guys watched or listened through as we gave kind of a high-level overview of the working genius, and then we talked some about Pat and I's kind of unique types. That was just a really fun conversation. What we want to do in this one is apply it to teams. So let's just start here. What are a couple of the kind of cool stories you've heard from teams that have literally been transformed by the 6 types of working genius?
You know, there's been so many. I'll give a couple of specific ones like that I've encountered. I worked with an executive team, and this was right after this came out, after the assessment did. And we had been working with them, some of our consultants, for a few years. And it was a tech company that hadn't come up with a new idea in years. I mean, they were just not on the front line of innovation. And it's a tech company. And so they were selling their legacy stuff, but the people that worked there were bummed, and the executives like, aren't we supposed to be innovative? And so they didn't understand why we did the working genius. And they looked at their team map, which shows all their geniuses and all their frustrations. And they realized nobody on their team had the genius of wonder. So they just never, as a leadership team, sat around and said, I wonder if our customers want something else. Where do you think the market's heading? Are we doing the right things? There was never time to do that because that was seen as a waste of time. Because if there's nobody on the team that has as a genius, everybody would be glad to move on to the to-dos. Well, they only had one person on the team that even had invention. So in ideation, they only had one person out of a team of like 9 people that had a genius in anywhere in ideation. And it was their lawyer. So they're looking at their thing. They had marketing, their head of technology, their head of engineering, the CEO, the COO. Nobody is really geared toward ideation at all. And the lawyer has a little bit in terms of that. And so they were like, oh my gosh, how are we ever going to come up with new ideas if nobody wonders and nobody invents? And then within about an hour, they were like, hey, they looked at the lawyer and they said, why don't you take over the responsibility for finding new technology for us to adopt? And the lawyer was like, well, I'm the lawyer. And they're like, yeah, I don't care. You're good at, you like that.
Yes.
And he said, I would love to do that. Now that's his full-time job.
No way.
And so this guy had been in a profession and in a job and a role where people weren't actually turning to him to use his genius. And just by looking at it, they did a reorg. And at first it wasn't even a super official one. They just slid a few responsibilities under him. And so we see this kind of thing happen all the time because we're locked into job descriptions and silos. But when you look at a team based on their working geniuses, it creates a whole new fluidity around, no, let's just put people in the right role and give them the right responsibilities that correspond to what gives them joy and energy. And productivity goes up, morale goes up. The company is doing better in the market. It's like, it's such a win-win. It's fantastic. So that's one story. And I know plenty of others too.
So good. So I talk with a lot of solopreneurs who say, of course, I can't hire this out. And people think kind of, oh, we can hire the 6 different geniuses, and they're obviously working a very small budget. Mid-sized companies that I talk to about borrowing. How do you borrow across different fields or verticals within your, I guess, silos within your company? Talk a little bit about that, Pat. What may be a good way, once you see this team map laid out in front of you, to kind of borrow the things you may need in your department or your area?
Well, and if you are a solopreneur, it's like, and people are like, should I partner with people? Is that going to am I going to have less business as a result of that? Are we going to be splitting it? Well, it depends who you partner with. If you're partner with somebody who wants to do the same thing as you, it might very well be that way. You might be multiplying your problem, but you're going to find somebody else who has totally different geniuses, and 1 + 1 is going to equal 5 in terms of business development, in terms of satisfying your clients, in terms of carving up the job. So this is to me, one of the most essential ways to look at diversity. Do you have diversity of joy and energy and skills and passions? And if so, that's really, truly what makes 1 + 1 equal more than 2. So let me tell you about a borrowing within a company. So we once, early when the assessment came out, we had a CEO who, I think he was the same CEO who first saw this and said, oh my gosh, this changes everything. Well, he had a woman on his team who was the head of sales. And it was a small to medium-sized business. I mean, it was decent size, but it wasn't like 3 people, but I don't think it was more than 100. And the woman in charge of sales was fantastic. She was a cultural fit. They'd hired her a few years earlier. She always made her numbers. The customers loved her. Her salespeople loved her. And so he was like, this is the greatest thing. And then the market changed and the distribution channel changed. And they went to her and they said, hey, you need to come up with a new sales strategy because the old one doesn't work. And she couldn't do it. She would rack her brain at it. She was like, oh, I feel terrible. I can't do it. And the CEO told us, he goes, I was thinking about firing her. I was thinking, I probably need a new head of sales. How can it? And this happens all the time, Alan. People move people out of their organization thinking, well, I guess they're not good enough. But then they did working genius and they just realized, oh, she has enablement, which means whenever a customer or an employee says, I need help, she's right there. And she has tenacity, which means when they have a commitment to make or a number to make, she's always going to do it. She's super reliable. We call them the loyal finisher. So in maintaining the sales department, she's fantastic. She had no I or D. And so what they said is, what are we going to do? They found a guy in marketing and said, hey, will you come over here and come to our offsite? And in 3 hours, he helped them come up with a new sales strategy. And they were like, that's all we needed. And the CEO was like, I almost lost one of my best employees. It would have totally sent a horrible message to the company that I got rid of somebody who was a cultural fit, had been successful, because I thought she had to be good at everything. Now they had made a hero out of this guy in marketing, helping the sales. And they turned what would have been a completely morale destroying and talent destroying and customer destroying decision into a win for everybody. All because they could look at this and go, oh, she just doesn't have that genius. And if she'd had that genius, she wouldn't have done a great job for the 2 or 3 years before in what she was doing. So there's another example how when we came up with this tool, we were torn because we were like, is this an individual understanding of themselves tool, or is this a teamwork and productivity tool? And the answer is both.
We focused mostly on geniuses last episode. So let's dive in a little bit on frustrations. What's valuable about understanding your frustrations, and just kind of start with that individually, but on the team sense, how's it helpful to understand the frustrations of your teammates as well?
Well, what a horrible thing when you're on a team and you know you're bad at something, but you feel like you're going to get dinged for admitting it. So you pretend you're not bad at it, which kind of gaslights people. And you end up putting yourself in a position where people keep giving you something to do. What it is, it's liberating for somebody to go, oh, you know how I failed at that? It's because of my frustration. And they let go of the guilt and feeling like they're a failure, and they realize, oh, this explains it. My first job out of school, Alan, was at a management consulting firm, and it was like I had landed the number, literally, there was a list, the number one job in America. And everybody said, congratulations, Pat, they're paying you a lot of money, you have the best job in America. But nobody actually looked at, did the job itself fit at what I was good at? And it was in my frustrations. And I survived for 2 years. It was horrible. And for years, I left there and I was like, I thought I was smart. I'm not smart because I wasn't smart in that job. And I thought I was a hard worker, which I was. I was a slavishly hard worker. But I was like, but I couldn't make that work. So maybe I'm actually lazy and dumb. Maybe this has been, and I really questioned who I was. And when we came up with this tool, I looked back and I said, oh, that was an ET job. And now if they were hiring me, they would go, hey, you're a great guy, but this would be a terrible job for you. And so I think that in terms of staffing, understanding what your frustrations are just as important as understanding what your geniuses are. So you will not try to get a job or put yourself in a position to prove yourself in an area you're not meant to. I think understanding our frustrations is as liberating as understanding your genius.
Agreed. And so we have in green our geniuses, in red our frustrations, the competencies. I think these are rather sneaky in the middle and can cause a lot of energy drain over time. Talk a little bit about that and sort of the danger of our competencies.
Yeah. So the thing about a competency, I like to say it's like a coffee cup, right? Your genius is a Yeti mug where you put coffee in it, screw the lid on tight, and it stays hot all day. It can maintain its energy forever. The working frustration is the Starbucks cup you pour coffee in, it's got a hole in the bottom and it just drains right out. Okay, that's horrible. But the one in the middle is that Starbucks cup, you pour coffee and you put a plastic lid on it, and you can keep it warm for a while. And so it's one of those areas where we think, well, at least it's my competency. The problem is we can justify that for a long time, and eventually we will get burned out. It wasn't one of my frustrations that crushed me that brought this tool. It was me going to my competency every day as my number one job. It's that galvanizing. And so what I say to people is, do not underestimate the difference between your genius and they're like, well, it's in my competency, so I'll take a job and I'll just do that. No, eventually that too will burn you out. And so now here's the good news. If somebody said, well, how much of your time should you spend in each area? I'm like, I think you got to spend at least 50% of your time in your genius. Find a job where at least you can spend a good portion. And if you had to spend 30% of your time, 35% of your time in your competency, you could probably do that knowing, well, at least I know I'm going to get that other half. And then you have 15 to 20% that could even be in your frustration, which as long as you knew, okay, I have to grind through this in order to look forward to that time I get to spend in my genius, we can do that. But if we're in a job where we see nothing but our competencies or frustrations, burnout, as your book would tell you, is inevitable. And the only way to avoid it is to do something distracting. And honestly, I think people take drugs, do alcohol, chase money,
social media,
houses.
Yep.
Because they're looking for something that feeds them, and they turn to something unhealthy.
Yes.
Because what they're actually doing, and by the way, this is not just your job. I mean, even in your home, you should know what your geniuses are and run your home, parent your children in a way that understands your geniuses. And one of the most painful things in our lives, and my wife and I talk about it today, is that we didn't understand working genius. And she spent most of her parenting years doing something she wasn't good at. And for years, I said, just outsource it, honey. It's makes you miserable, paying the bills and being on top of the calendar. And she's like, no, she felt too guilty to outsource it. Now that she looks at her genius, she's like, I would have outsourced it had I known that this was unhealthy. She thought she had to prove that she was a good mom by doing things she hated. Because after all, she had friends who loved doing those things she hated. And she thought, what's wrong with me? And it's like, yeah, God gave you different geniuses.
Yes. I would even say for me as a parent, and there's quite a bit of talk, by the way, about parental burnout. And it's not just from the volume of things, but the kind of things that a lot of parents are involved in, or the way that they're doing it against the grain versus with the grain. I feel like the summer works with me and my working genius. The school year works against me and my working genius. And so about 3 weeks from now, I'll feel that shift, and it's like my soul just opens, Pat, as a father. And I'm like, I'm a better father. It actually helped me explain that.
Because school and sports and structure in society dictates everything. And so if you're just receiving that and responding to it, you can get by. But if you have any desire to come up with something new or to push or to change things or I have an ideal outlook, most of life gives us no permission to do that.
Yes.
And some people are actually other people would say summer crushes me because I like the structure. I like other people to dictate how things work, and I don't want to have to do that.
My wife is one of those. We literally feel completely different about the different seasons, but it helped me explain that. Certainly some of the tasks at home, like you talk about. The team map. I may be the biggest fan of your team map out there, Pat. I tell people it's worth its weight in gold. That team map alone, and maybe we'll put an image of that. We can certainly link to that in the show notes. Incredible. But talk through the team map and kind of what does that look like and how could that be helpful for a team to visualize?
So you have 8 or 10 people on a team, or 5 or 4. And they all take the assessment, and then they put it, and they print out their team map, or they get the image of that. And you just look at all 6 of the geniuses, and you go, okay, how many people with each genius is on our team, and that's in green, and how many people with the frustrations, and that's in red. And you right away the implications jump out at you. Like on our team map, we had like 9 people on our team in our small company, and I was the only one with invention. Now, what was interesting, not only I was the only one with that as a genius, but like 6 of the 9 people had it as a frustration. What that meant is most of the people were going to run from things that involved invention, and I was going to have to carry that load, which I loved. But if we were misusing me in other areas, we were not going to get the invention we needed, and I was going to get burned out. So we looked at that and we said, oh, let's get Pat out of all these other things. We need his invention. He's our only one. We need to honor that. Similarly, we had only one person with tenacity as a genius. And we were like, we're going to kill her. Because she always says, yes, I'll do it. And she gets things done. But after a while, she was like, is anybody going to help? And so we said, okay, we're going to burn her out. And then we had everybody with a genius of discernment. We said, okay, everybody loves to weigh in, and everybody's got good evaluation of these things. Maybe that's going to slow us down in terms of taking risks, because everybody will kind of see like, well, this could go wrong. So it literally took like 15 minutes to look at it. It jumps off the page and goes, well, there's our challenge. And you will look back and go, no wonder we're good at this part of our work. No wonder we struggle at this part of our work. And you know what it helped us do, Alan? When we hired our next few people, now, first of all, we had to say we got to hire corporate values. We hired a guy who was at IG, and he could, now I had another inventor, Cody on our team had another galvanizer, and suddenly what we got from that one hire was 5 times better than in the past where we just hired somebody to fill a slot.
The ET was that for us. And so if you're watching this, Quinn, we love you. And it was the perfect wiring to go based on not only me and the rest of our team, but the season we're heading into. Man, we're going to need an ET, and they're going to be thrilled, by the way, to work on our team, because we're going to have plenty to say, hey, here's what's next. Support, and then push it across the finish line. Oh, it's been beautiful.
You know, Alan, one of the hard things is about it. So if you don't have a lot of ET and you hire one, they're going to need different things as a man. Like we'll hire an ET and go, good, we got him. But we think, okay, figure out what you should do. And they're like, no, that's not how I work. Tell me what you want me to do. Give me clear boundaries about what will work. So we always also have to adjust the way we manage somebody, or we will expel them like a virus from the organization because they're going to go, thanks for hiring me. I'm not like everybody else, but can somebody help, allow me to be an ET?
All right. Free consulting. I'm an IG. I'm working directly with an ET. Pat, what do I need to know? What do I need to avoid?
He or she is going to want more structure than you, that you would go like, well, to be a good manager, I should just turn you loose and let you figure it all out. Because that's what you like.
You're reading my mail.
And he's going to go, or she's going to go, oh, you're crushing me. And you're going, why? The best jobs in the world I don't want to give you any metrics or any to-dos. I want you to figure it out. And they're like, no, your trash is my treasure. And so we had to reevaluate and we're still figuring it out, how we manage them. Similarly, if you were an ET company, you brought in an ID or an IG, and you go, okay, so we want you to ID from 9 o'clock to 11 o'clock every Friday. And then they're like going to be, oh, no, I don't work like that. So you're going to have to be flexible about how you tap into their geniuses, because if you just slide somebody in a culture where you're not used to that, you might very well crush them. Hey, by the way, there's another thing I want to talk to you about, Alan, and that is, here's one of the ways we think teams use working genius, and that is their vocabularies change. So you're a team and you're in a room and people are talking about something, and this happens all the time in like meetings, right? And people go, oh, can we clarify something? Is this an ID, a WID meeting? Which is, are we wondering and coming up with ideas and evaluating? Or is this a GET meeting where we're getting people on task and figuring out how we're going to finish this? And sometimes 3 people will be in a meeting and they all have a different understanding of what kind of meeting it is based on their natural type. And it's no wonder that it's painful. So we talk about it like, are you galvanizing me right now? Which means, are you telling me you want me to do that? And half the time I say, oh, I'm not G-ing you, I'm I-ing you. I'm inventing right now, and it sounds like I'm asking you to take action. I'm definitely not doing that. And they're like, oh, I was making a list of the things I had to go do. You're just throwing it against the wall. And then, until we had the language, half the people running out of the room with to-dos, the other people thought we were just brainstorming.
So understanding where are we in the stage of that, and those 3 stages we talked about in the last podcast. What about project flow? Where is this project? How can we kind of name and help identify that?
And that goes with this too. It's so funny, and different people will enjoy different parts of the project flow more than others, of course, by their working genius, but they can't opt out. So in other words, people will go, okay, we need to go have a brainstorming meeting about how we're going to do with this new project. And the GT or the ET is going to go, can I skip that meeting? Because those are painful for me. It feels like we're wasting time and we're brainstorming and you guys have your heads up in the clouds. It drives me freaking crazy because I have all these to-dos. And what we say is, no, you need to be there for the sausage being made. You have to see how it comes about. And we know it's going to be painful for you. So just go in there knowing that, when you want to say, that's not practical, hold that in, because that's not what kind of meeting it is. Similarly, we'll have a WI or an ID CEO like me go into a meeting to talk about, we're about to launch something. So we got to go over the launch schedule, and we're totally in the T mode. And they show up and go, hey, I have an idea. And that's when you have to go, no, you don't. We passed out of that phase a long time ago. We're here now to implement. And so we appreciate that you have new ideas, but we're in a different part of the project flow. But you need to be here to watch us plan. And you're going to have to restrain your desire to be doing invention when we're no longer in invention mode. And actually, people have a really good capacity to do that when it's that explicit. But if you just put a bunch of people in a room without any clarity around where they are, the wonderers are going to wonder, the inventors are going to invent, the galvanizers are going to galvanize, the tenacity people are going to be doing tenacity work. And it causes stress, frustration, and even conflict, like ugly personal conflict, like, why are you so anal? Or why are you so flaky? When really what it is we just aren't clear about what part of the project we're in. Does that make sense?
Oh, Absolutely. I've seen it. It becomes personal, and then it becomes an attack on their character versus this common language that this is so helpful for so many different ways. So meetings, project flow, obviously understanding individually how these folks are, shifting around team responsibilities, borrowing, hiring, the team map, anything else, Pat, that's key as people are listening, say, how could this be helpful to my team?
I think you hit them. I think the main thing is people can now actually call each other out on things in a way that doesn't feel like they're being judged or attacked, but they're being honored. And it's like, hey, Phyllis, I know you have high tenacity. We love that about you, but we're going to need you to put that away right now, because if we're too tenacious early on, we're not going to be able to. And they're like, you got it. I hear you. So you're honoring who they are rather than saying, could you be a little more open-minded? Could you just be creative? And you're saying, oh, I know why you do that. And we love that about you. For right now, we can put that away. And people laugh. They laugh about things that they used to feel defensive about. Like, what do you mean I'm not creative? And they're like, oh yeah, I'm an ET. I just want to implement. And it turns what used to be tension into humor and, more importantly, agility around what you're actually trying to get done.
I had a leader, Pat, tell me, I thought I was dumb sitting in this meeting while they're double responsive, and they were essentially waiting for that moment to be able to discern the ideas. And I felt like they were dumb because they could not come up with those natively. But the moment you hit discernment, it was like he jumped into gear and was all over it. And so that's one of those phrases I hear a lot. Are there a couple other phrases that you hear, when a team feels freed by this? What do they say?
Well, what they usually do is they talk to one another using the language of working genius, which in a good way objectifies it, not like objectifies, but objectifies feedback that used to feel personal. And it allows everybody to go, yeah, we're just talking about the process and the behaviors, not about the personality or the individual. But you reminded me of a story, like we had a number of pastors right after we came up with this call and go, I thought I was a fraud for years. A lot of people have, they feel like a fraud. Or what do you call that? What's the complex you have, like the imposter syndrome? And I said, why? And he goes, yeah, I felt like I was a terrible pastor. I should have never been a pastor. And I said, why? And he goes, well, I couldn't write a homily or a sermon to save my life. And most of the pastors I know can go for a walk in the woods and come up with a 4-part series. And he goes, I can't do it. And I thought, I'm not supposed to be a pastor. I got to pretend like I can do it, but I'm terrible at it. And I'm like, so what's your working genius? And he tells me, do you like counseling people? Do you like one-on-one counseling when people are going through grief? And then he goes, oh yeah, I live for that. I love that. Yeah, that would make sense. Do you know that other guy that comes up with those homilies and sermons? He probably hates that. And he feels like an imposter because he's like, how come I don't like counseling people and listening to their problems? I've had priests say to me, and I'm Catholic, I don't like to hear confession, which every priest has to hear confession. But confession is a one-on-one, a spiritual, deeply thoughtful thing. And some of them are like, no, I want to preach. And the other one goes, no, I want to counsel. And it's like a pastor is not a pastor is not a pastor. A CEO is not a CEO is not a CEO. A head of marketing is not a head of marketing is not a head of marketing. We have to understand who we are and go about doing those jobs in the way that fits. And when the team understands that, we use one another better and we get more from everyone.
Yes. What type of leader are you? What type of CEO? What type of pastor based on this? So freeing. And I've been in those moments. I was actually with a tech company doing this and they went, whoa, we're going to hire. We have tons of wonder. And so how's that impacting our team? And then how might we hire around that? So practical. Pat, as we bring this in for a landing, I get a lot of questions about this. 5 dysfunctions of a team, ideal team player, so many of your other books, messages. How does the working genius fit within those or maybe even connects those?
I'm so glad you asked that, Alan. So we've figured out how it all works together. And we're working on a product right now around this. But here's how it works. The first thing you need to do when you're building a team is you got to make sure everybody belongs there. And what we mean by that is, do they want to be on a team? Are they a team player? And that's ideal team player. And that's like, are they humble? Are they hungry? And are they smart? Now, that doesn't mean they have to be perfect, but generally, are they more interested in the group than themselves? If they're not, deal breaker. Are they willing to work hard for the group, or is it like minimizing their own contribution? If it's about minimizing, it's a deal breaker. And then smart is, are they aware of people and do they know how to interact with people? Now, everybody's bad at some times, and we have a bad day. But generally speaking, if a person is not egregiously terrible at any of those, they belong on the team. So we say it starts with the ideal team player. They belong on the bus. They belong on the team. The next question is, what position should they be in on the team, on the field? What seat on the bus should they have? And that's working genius. It's like, okay, so that person, it wants to be a team player. They belong on the team. Now let's figure out who they are. What are we going to do with them? Are they a receiver? Are they blocking? Are they an infielder? Are they a designated hitter? Whatever else it is, what should they do? Then we get to the 5 dysfunctions of a team. Now it's about getting the team to perform and to win games. But if they're not meant to be on the team and we don't know what their skills and talents and passions and energy is, it doesn't make as much sense. So that's how it all fits together. And so we wrote the book, The 5 Dysfunctions of a Team, first. And then we realized, oh, well, some people don't really belong on a team. And then we did the Working Genius, and we sat down one day, we said, how does this all work together? And that's the ideal order for those 3 things.
Love that. Pat, amazing couple episodes. And folks, if you did not listen to the first one as you get to this, you will have missed a lot. Go on back. Anything else that you want to say to our listeners? Anything else that we didn't cover?
Gosh, you did a great job, Alan. I mean, somebody listened to the last episode and they said, wow, he had great questions and he's really insightful. Somebody told me. And so I think you were very thorough. I think, remember this, it all comes down to joy and energy. And I think that's why this assessment is good, because people do know that about themselves. When you say, what are you good at? They're like, well, I can be good. But then you go, no, what feeds you? People are usually like, that's what it is. And if you start with joy and energy, everything else falls into place. But if you're working against your joy and energy, it's really difficult to be the best you can be, the best version of yourself. So I guess I would end it with that.
Beautiful. Well, Pat and the team at Table Group, thank you so much for bringing this into the world. I have so many, dozens now of stories sitting with teams and facilitating this. I remember one gal that said, oh no, I should not be in the role that I'm in here, and is moving toward freedom, saying, this just isn't a fit for me. And so thank you guys for the doors that this opens for people, and frankly, the needed closed doors that this brings. So grateful. And friends, hang on just a minute here, and I'll give you a direct call to action in terms of where to go for the assessments, how you find those, and some of the advantage of that. Pat, thanks for coming on the podcast.
Thank you, Alan. God bless.
Wow. Guys, what a gift that was to listen to that. What a gift that was for me to get some time with Pat. And I can just tell you from before and after the interviews, Pat is a man of deep integrity. He's the kind of guy that I want to be, that not only has a brain for business and for organizational leadership, but models that with his team with humility. And he obviously is incredibly intelligent, but that's actually not what I admire most about him. I know plenty of intelligent people who are jerks. He is brilliant, but he has a high character, high integrity. He leads his team well. And I just love the origin story of this, where it came from a frustration in his life. But what I love is that their team is so generous and open-handed with this. I have gotten to sit with dozens of teams now, whether they're church teams or business teams or a nonprofit, it doesn't matter, and to be able to facilitate this. So as a facilitator, I want to say that you probably need help translating. What does this mean? I've heard so many people, they take the assessment and go, that's good, but I don't really know what to do with it. But to actually take that assessment, go into a team map that organizes your whole team together, and then the third step is I come in and facilitate a training. Now, whether that's with 25 people or 3 people, to take a look at how your geniuses fit together, how your frustrations impact your work together as a team, and if you were going to hire, who else you would bring in. That's the kind of stuff that we do. I've got 3 different offerings, and I would love to come in and train your team and how to translate the working genius into greater cohesion and alignment are the 2 big words. So if you're interested in that, go ahead and shoot me an email at hello@stayforth.com. That's HELLO@STAYFORTH.com. And we'll set up a time to talk about this training. Friends, I could not be more grateful for Pat and for the team. And actually, the Working Genius is a sponsor of this podcast right here. So we're going to continue to talk about them. It's one of my favorite topics right now, and it ain't going out of style anytime soon. So Pat, I'm so grateful for you. The Table Group, so grateful for you. And the team at The Working Genius, thank you so much for your sponsorship, making this podcast happen, and for changing so many lives along the way. Friend, go take the assessment, go reach out. I would love to be able to come in with your team and to translate this into more alignment, more cohesion. More topics like this are coming up. We have some incredible leaders this spring, and we have a great summer series we've got planned for you. Thanks for tuning along and tracking with us here at Stay Forth. Friends, you do not have to burn out or flame out. You can get healthy, create healthy culture around you, and be the type of leader that not only doesn't draw people away from you, but actually draws people toward you and creates the healthy culture that will make people stick. Friends, we love you. We're going to keep bringing you some incredible topics here. Thanks for tuning in for the podcast.